guys, what is up and welcome back to another Momtober video. First of all, I really hope that's not too distracting. In my viewfinder it looks okay, but sometimes when I put things into my editing software it looks a little different. Anyway, we are settled in with a cozy coffee because we are doing five crock-pot recipes today. So I wanted to switch things up. The 5 recipes that I have, we have, I believe, 2 soups, 1 dinner or lunch, 2 kind of dessert-ish items. One's more for like breakfast brunch, and the other one's just an easy recipe, but they are all super easy. I'm gonna walk you through them in a little bit of a different style crock-pot recipe video. So all of the recipes are in the crock-pot only. They're not like cook on the stove first or anything like that. I want to say most of them are dump and go, but there's a couple of items that you kind of do like separately, if that makes sense, but they're all so easy. So I hope you guys enjoy this video and let's jump into it. The first recipe I am sharing is a lemon orzo chicken soup. So think classic chicken soup with orzo, which is like those little tiny, almost like rice-like noodles, and a little twist of lemon juice in there. It adds a little bit of brightness. A lot of these recipes, I think every single one of these recipes is sort of heavy, cozy, and warm. That's what I think of when I think of like crock-pot meals and fall recipes. But this lemon orzo soup has just a little bit of brightness from the squeeze of lemon in there. Of course you can omit it and it will be like a typical chicken noodle soup kind of style video, but I do like the addition of a little squeeze of lemon.
Starting out with the classic carrots, celery, and onion for any chicken soup. I am putting some chicken tenders in the crock pot. You can use chicken breast if you prefer. Seasoning it with salt and pepper, a little bit of garlic, about a tablespoon of butter, and Italian seasoning in there. I always try to season my chicken before I put in all of the broth. That way it is nice and flavorful. I don't use exact measurements, so please bear with me. Some of these do not have exact measurements, but you can absolutely eyeball things and season with your heart's desire and just taste test along the way. It's really not exact science when it comes to cooking. I just covered, I think I used a whole carton of chicken broth in there as well. I always use low sodium so I can add my own salt. Go ahead and cook this on low for about 4 hours depending on your crock pot. And then you are going to shred the chicken once it is completely cooked. It's going to basically fall apart and shred by itself, and then you can go ahead and add your orzo. I think I added about a half a cup, but this ended up being a little bit too much. It absorbs a lot of liquid, so add a little less than you think you need unless you like it really thick. And then at the very last moment when you're ready to serve, squeeze in the juice of a half a lemon in there, and it adds that nice brightness to the soup.
All right, next up we are doing more of a brunch dessert type item. You guys, when I tell you this was an unexpected, amazing recipe that I'm going to keep on rotation in my house from now on in the fall and winter, which is probably a bad thing because it's loaded with sugar and butter, but man, when I tell you it's delicious. These are the pecan sticky buns. They make the best brunch weekend treat. And I'm using store-bought biscuit dough for these. You can absolutely use honey butter biscuits. I just personally used the jumbo buttermilk regular biscuits because we are adding lots of butter, lots of brown sugar and flavor. I felt like I didn't need any more sweetness, but you do you, boo. These took a couple of hours in the crock pot, so something that's going to be, like I said, a brunch, or if you wake up super early before your kids and get them started. Yeah, totally love them. And you can customize. If you don't like pecans, you can use other nuts, or you can just omit the nuts all together. But I think the pecans are kind of a must to break up the texture and add a little bit of crunch through that sweetness, if that makes any sense.
For the pecan sticky buns, I do have exact measurements for you. You're going to start out with 1 cup of melted butter, which is about 2 sticks. I used unsalted, but you can use whichever you prefer. You have 3/4 cup of packed light brown sugar and 1/4 cup of granulated sugar, and also 1 tablespoon of ground cinnamon. So both of the sugars, the cinnamon, go ahead and melt those or mix them into the melted butter to create that sauce. And I'm also using, like I said, canned biscuit dough, and I'm just using the buttermilk one. So starting out with a couple of tablespoons, maybe 3-4 tablespoons of that butter brown sugar sauce in the bottom of your crock pot, and then shove all of those biscuits at the bottom, kind of squeeze them in there, make room, but you want them all kind of touching the bottom to get that gooey, sticky syrup. And then all you do is dump the rest of the brown sugar, cinnamon, butter mixture all on the top to get in all of the crevices of the sticky buns of the biscuits, and then top it with a nice layer of chopped pecans. Go ahead and cook this in your crock pot for I think it was about 2 hours, just until the biscuits are nice and cooked, and then you will know it is ready. Oh, you guys, these were so good, and I want to make them again this weekend.
All right, moving on to another soup. So we have, you can call it either like a creamy chicken chili or a creamy chicken taco soup. I feel like it's more of like a taco soup, but this is so delicious. Sydney ended up having this for lunch at school the next day and had like 3 bowls the first day, between the first couple of days that I made it. It has, of course, shredded chicken, a little cream cheese in there to make it a little more cozy and filling, and lots of beans, corn. We have Rotel tomatoes in there, and I love crushing tortilla chips to sprinkle on top to add a nice crunch. You can even like scoop the tortilla chips and just eat it that way. Absolutely delicious. And this is one of those soups that holds up and is even better the next day, and it thickens up just a little bit more the next day.
All right, so this soup is a dump and go recipe, which I love. You can just pop all the ingredients in there and pretty much go. So starting out with seasoning some chicken breast, we have salt and pepper, onion powder, garlic powder, a little bit of cumin, paprika, a little bit of chili pepper, depending on if you like it a little spicy or not. And I think that was all I used for seasonings. Just loading it up. You can, of course, use the packet of taco seasoning if you have that and prefer that on hand. I am popping in some Rotel tomatoes. I used the mild ones with the diced green chili. I have canned corn with the juice of the canned corn and black beans. So I just eyeballed this depending on how big of a portion of soup you're making. You can use the whole can of all of it, everything, or just some of it. And then an 8-ounce block of cream cheese. I cooked this on low until the chicken was nice and cooked, so about 4 hours or so. And then I mixed up all of the cream cheese into the soup and kind of shredded the chicken. The chicken, again, just kind of falls apart when it's nice and cooked. And then serve it with some crushed tortilla chips on top. This is the warmest, coziest soup, and definitely a staple rotational dinner in my household.
Okay, this next one, I do believe I might have made this way back in my very first Momtober series like years and years ago, but super, super simple. We are making homemade cinnamon applesauce in the crock pot. I recently went apple picking and I have a ton of apples and I didn't necessarily know what to do with them. Of course, I can make apple crisp, apple pie. I'm just not the largest fan of apple pie. So I wanted to go ahead and make a cinnamon applesauce. Sydney devoured this. I devoured this, and I'm not even an applesauce like fanatic. This is the type of recipe that you can use more or less of any ingredient and it will probably still come out amazingly. All you use is, of course, apples, cinnamon, sugar, and water. That is it. Serve this warm with a little bit of whipped cream and you will have the most decadent applesauce. I know applesauce is such a simple thing, but making it homemade, in my opinion, is just a million times better than any store-bought applesauce you can get.
So this recipe is completely customizable depending on how much cinnamon you like in your applesauce or how sweet you want yours as well. I started out with about 7 Macintosh apples. I love Macintosh apples for applesauce. I think they're just tart and they cook really well, nice and soft. So I went ahead and peeled those and decored them. I make sure I have no traces of peel or core because to me that's the worst texture to get in a homemade applesauce. I go ahead and slice those up, put those in the crock pot. I covered them with a cup of granulated sugar. Now you can use up to like a half a cup if you like it sweeter, but I used a third. I also did use 1 teaspoon of cinnamon, and you can use half that or less than that if you don't like it so cinnamony. Is cinnamony a word? Anywho. And then I covered it with about a half a cup of water. Let this cook until the apples were super, super, super tender. I think this ended up cooking in about 2 to 3 hours, maybe it was about 3 hours or so. And then I went ahead and mashed it, and that was it. Served it with a little bit of whipped cream. It does, the color and thickness, it does get a little bit more thick and dark brown and caramelized as it cools. And yeah, this is just so delicious. Serve it warm with whipped cream and you have a delicious treat.
Last but not least, we are making a dinner. I have made this recipe before, but not in the crock pot, and this was years ago. I am making a butternut squash mac and cheese. Sydney asked for mac and cheese for school lunch, and I thought, let's do a butternut squash mac and cheese. We'll add some fall flavors in there. We'll add a little hidden veggies in there. Not that I have to hide them for her, but I love the flavors of butternut squash mac and cheese with just a touch of nutmeg. Of course, you can omit it if you don't like nutmeg. And this was really easy in the crock pot. It did take a couple of different steps because we are cooking the butternut squash in the crock pot before I add the noodles, of course, so the noodles don't turn to mush.
So the first thing you're going to want to do is cook up your butternut squash. You can absolutely roast this in the oven, but I just didn't want to put any more effort into it than I had to. So I used about a cup of diced butternut squash. I put this in the crock pot with about a 1/4 cup of chicken broth, and that's just to add some steam in there. I seasoned with salt and pepper and put a bay leaf in there. You don't have to do the bay leaf. I just like a little bit extra fall flavors. And then you're gonna cook the butternut squash until it's really tender. I think mine ended up cooking in about 2 hours on low. And then take out the bay leaf, and you're gonna go ahead and mash up the butternut squash. Now you can use an immersion blender if you want it really, really smooth, if you have maybe like picky eaters or you don't like a texture in your mac and cheese. So you can make this as smooth or as gritty. I don't know if gritty is the right word, or as textured as you like. And then I go ahead and add milk. So I'm gonna use about 2 cups of, I use 2% milk, and then a whole 8 ounces of shredded sharp cheddar in there, mixed everything all together, make sure I seasoned well with salt and pepper, and then I go ahead and add my elbow macaroni noodles. I used about a half a box. You can absolutely double this recipe if you are feeding more than like 2 or 3 people. And then all you have to do is let that cook until the noodles are nice and cooked, and you have yourself a delicious butternut squash mac and cheese. I forgot to add some nutmeg in the beginning with my seasonings, so I just sprinkled in a little bit of nutmeg to add a little bit more warmth. Like I said, you don't have to if you don't want to. And then I served this for Sydney's school lunch today.
All right, you guys, I hope you enjoyed these 5 crock-pot recipes. If you give them a try, definitely let me know. And I hope you enjoyed. Stay tuned for tomorrow's Momtober video. Lots more recipes to come throughout the next couple of weeks as well. Bye, guys.